contain multiple properties. But in this case, I think we only really want one property, and that is to track our circles. Okay, so we're going to start with an empty array of circles. So when we're building these React apps, we typically need to start with empty blanks, right? Like with containers for the things that we're going to fill up, right? Just because we don't have any circles, that doesn't mean that we don't want to start with a bucket to put the circles in. So that's pretty much what we want to do. We want to create that container, and we're going to start filling that container as we click this button. Okay, and that's pretty common in React apps, is that we always start with the container first, and then we'll start filling it. And every time we change this state, every time we add a new circle, it reruns this function, the render function. So this render function, on top of having this button in there, we're also going to want to loop over these circles and print them out, right? Now, obviously there's no circles right now, so if there's no circles to loop over, nothing will happen, but we're still going to attempt to loop over it, okay? So which is where we do our map, right? We're going to say this dot state dot circles, okay? Dot map, and we're going to print them out, right? Now, we had mentioned you should have two components. So I'm not going, I mean, I can go ahead and I can put the HTML or the JSX in here just to demonstrate, and then we can copy it over. That works. Okay, so that's what I'll do. So we're going to say circle, because we're going over all the circles. We're mapping over all the circles, and this is an individual circle. And we're going to say our JSX should probably look something like this. This can get kind of hairy. Okay, turn, what is a circle going to be? Let's just call it a div, and it's going to have circle dot number. I guess we'll call it number, because every circle has a number. Circles, by the way, this is what I'm going for. Circles are going to be objects, okay, because they have two pieces of information. They have a number and they have a background color. Or it's not actually that, it would be something like, right? Okay, so they have two pieces of information. So we're going to make them objects. So that way they can store that information really well. Okay, so they'll have, this is what we're going to shoot for. So this is what they're going to look like. Oops. And so they'll have a number, and we'll also have to give them a background color, right? There's obviously a problem here, but I'll fix that shortly. Okay. To do style, right? To do style, we use the style tag. And this is, we looked at this the other day, but it's a little bit, and it obviously takes these brackets because we're going to be dynamically inserting style, right? So we want to switch out of JSX into JavaScript, but it accepts an object. So we have to give it an object. So you get this weird double brace thing. Okay, the inner one represents an object, a JavaScript object. The outer one represents us going from JSX into JavaScript. And then we have to have a key value, right? The key is going to be background color, and the value is going to be circle dot color. I guess it could be background color. Okay. And then in addition to this, we also need some sort of key. The key should probably be, I don't know, let's just call it circle.number for now. Not a good one. I'll show you a little hint, tip, workaround that we can do for that. That's better. Okay. Something.
You need a wrapper for these two elements. You're returning two elements.
Sorry, I'm just looking here.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm missing this thing.
Empty type.
Right? Yeah, that. Okay, so there's this. So I gotta fix this anyways. Oh yeah. Okay, so there's a couple things here. Obviously, this one. Right, so we're just going to do this. So there's this is not uncommon, right? Where you just start coding and you run into a couple little problems here. So there we go. So obviously I was returning two elements. Yes, you're right. So a button and all these divs, right? And they're at the same level. So I needed one parent. We can only return one parent element or one element. It can have as many children as it wants, and so I'm just going to return this fragment, okay, this empty fragment around it. Inside of that, there's going to be a button, and then we're going to have this. Something that you might see too occasionally is you might see people, instead of when they're doing these maps, instead of having the return, okay, because map actually needs to have something returned, but when they use arrow functions, they might actually not put the return, but they might still do multiple lines. They might do it like this. So this is the same idea that we're using over here on this return. It allows us to like span multiple lines with our code without having to worry about putting the word return. Because remember, with arrow functions, the return, assuming that you don't put curly braces, is implicit. It will automatically return. It still looks kind of hard to understand, but it looks a little bit better when we do it like this. Yeah. Okay. So this goes with that one, and this one goes with this one. This is definitely a case to have colored, what is it? Colored brackets. What's it called? Does anyone remember? Color brackets?
Bracket pair colorizer tool.
Bracket pair colorizer. Yeah, that is a must. Pair colorizer too. That is a must for this. There we go. Much better. Now we can see how they're pairing. Okay. There we go. So this is going to be our what our circles look like. Okay, so obviously we have our style where we're getting the background. We have our number for key, the key, right? Everyone has to have an individual ID. Okay, we can also put an ID in here, and I'll show you how we can add, like, do that after. Actually, yeah, let's do that. We'll say it has an ID as well. Okay, so this is, I'm only putting this here to show you what our plan is, what our object is going to look like. Okay, and then we have a number in here. Okay. Now, I said that I want you to build two components. So instead of putting this in here, and I know this seems so simple, why would I move this into a component? The idea is that I want you to practice, okay? So we're going to build a circle component. So we're going to say new file, circle.js. Going forward, don't worry about managing the CSS and creating a new CSS file every time. I really want to focus on the JavaScript part. So let's just work in whatever CSS file that works for us. If you want to put your stuff in index.css, you want to put your stuff in circleslist.css, that's fine for this course. Not a good idea in real life. There will be a very clear requirement of where that goes when you're working on a team. However, for this class, that's fine. Okay. So we're going to be building the circle component. The circle component is obviously going to look a lot like this. Okay. We're going to have a, it doesn't have to be a class. It can be just a function. Okay, because it's a stateless component. It itself is not going to have state. And actually, we can export default this bad boy right here. Okay. And it's going to need some props because it's going to need to accept some data in, and it's going to need to return some JSX. Okay. These parentheses, they're so unique to React. It's not that we couldn't use them before. It's not a React thing. It just happens to be something that's very commonly used in React programming because we have this JSX that spans multiple lines. Typically, we don't have return values that span multiple lines, and so we normally wouldn't use these parentheses. But in JSX, using JSX, we often have return values that span multiple lines. And so having these parentheses is very common. Okay. It's not that they're unique to React. It's just that we never needed to use them before. And now we're using them all the time. Okay. Just in React, only because it helps readability. That's the only reason. It helps for readability. You can pretty much put parentheses around anything you want. So we're going to come over here and we're going to grab this because this is really our circle. Okay. And we're going to make this more readable. This is something you might see too. I don't know if this is more readable, but it's something. So I don't know if this is more readable.
Why is there one more pointy bracket at the end of circle?
It goes with this, right? Open div, property, close div, content.
And there's one more.
Oh, there we go. That's interesting. Yeah, let's do this. We can do this actually. That's helpful. There we go. Okay. Now these are no longer going to be circle.id or circle.background color or circle.number because they're coming in from props. So let's go fix this up on this side. Let's delete this and let's make this component. Let's use this component that we created, right? We have this component that we created. Let's use it. To use that component, obviously we have the file. So we're going to need to include that file in here. Import from circle. Okay. Now we can use it. Circle. And we're going to pass in the props. We're going to say circle. Don't forget your closing bracket, otherwise you'll get that. Okay, so I'm going to pass in this circle. I'm going to just change this just a little bit. Circle element, just so we get a little bit of differentiation here. Okay, and let's call this circle object. Okay. And this is just for you, just so you can look back at this and be like, oh yeah, okay, now I know which one's which, okay? So we have our circle component. This is the prop name that it's going to come in as. And this is the element that we're pulling out from map. So we're passing that whole thing in. So over here, props, it's going to be props dot circle object. I call it object obj, circle obj, because that's what I said. That's what I called it. So that's what it is over here, circle obj. Okay. And we're just going to copy that here, copy that here. Okay. And we actually, do we need to even import anything? I'm curious. I'm not using component. I'm just going to not import anything and see if this works. Never tried that before. Okay, so I don't get any warnings. It's good. So let's just start off with one circle, I guess, right? I have one circle in here. It should display a circle. Let's see if we get a circle. Do I have this running? React must be in scope. Okay, so I do need to import something. I do need to import React. Okay. So even though it doesn't look like I'm using it, it says I'm using JSX. So, and circle list. And it also wants React over here too, which is fine. Okay, so compiled successfully. And I have a button and I have a circle. Circle, the box, right? I have no CSS. Okay, I'll just add the smallest bit of CSS to make it a circle. Okay, we'll give it a width of 100 pixels, a 50 pixels maybe, 50 pixels, a height of 50 pixels, or instead, I guess we'll make it padding. A height of 50 pixels.
Border radius?
What's that?
Border radius.
Yeah, I'll do a border radius. Display inline block. So my other ones that will sit beside it. Inline block, border radius, 50%. And actually, if I do a display, how do I text align center? Color white. And actually, so if you want it to sit in the middle, there's a lot of different ways, but I found the easiest way for this one is just to, instead of height, line height. And it sits in the middle. And then we can say font size, pixels, 7 pixels. There we go. There is our button. So all these buttons we'll just put in circleless CSS. Say dot, circle, that stuff in. And then these circles over here, we'll give a class name too. And see, we're starting to come off the screen there. So now would be a good time to do something like this. Okay. There's going to be more stuff coming in here. So there we go. We have our circle. Now, this is just a sample circle. I'm also going to give a little thing to this button. We're going to say width, not width 100%, but we're just definitely going to say display block, just to make sure that it doesn't sit beside that stuff over here. Okay. and with 100 pixels margin auto. There we go. Okay, so we have our, but by default, we're not going to actually have circles in here, right? We need to add circles. So this is just a sample. And we could keep the sample to start just so we have something, so we know what we're trying to build, okay? So let's start by making new circles, okay? So when we click this button, we want new circles to come out. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to put event listener on this button, okay? So we're gonna put an event listener on here on click. And this event listener is going to trigger a function, trigger a method that we write, okay? So let's write a method called add circle. And again, I did it. You shouldn't write your methods like this. You should write your methods like this. So that way you don't have that problem with this inside of it. If you write your functions the other way inside of these classes, you're going to have problems with this. And so we want to use arrow functions here. Okay. So equals arrow function, great. Next up, so all we're going to do is we're going to call add circle. What does add circle do? So add circle is just going to, it's not just going to, it's going to modify state. Okay, it's going to modify the state. That's what we're going to do. So let's just get this hooked up and make sure it's working. Add circle. So on click, call this function. And let's just say console log. I love how easy it is to add event listeners to things in React. It's so nice. And we'll pop on over here. It says add circle. This is this dot add circle. Sorry. This dot add circle. Okay. So all we're looking for is a little click, 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 click. Good. We have that high. Okay. Oh, it doesn't like that. I'm going to have to make a quick change after. Sorry, bouncing around. Okay. This dot add circle, and that's working. So what am I going to do? I need to update the state. Okay, I need to update this state. When I update this state inside of here, this will rerun, which means what ends up happening is I add another thing to circles. Since this is rerunning, this gets re-rendered and my additional circle shows up. So I need to update the state. Now, remember, I have two options for set state. I have set state, where I just pass in an object, and I have where I get a function with previous state. Now, the question is, do I need the previous state to build the next state, right? Do I need to know what was in there before to build what's coming up? And the answer is yeah, because I need to append. So I need to know what was in there before, so that way I can increase it, right? If I was just inserting something blindly, that's fine, but I'm not. And you would know that. If you ever choose to use this particular set state, and you ever inside of here are referring to this dot state again, right? That means this was the wrong choice, because this line here means that you needed the previous state to calculate the next state, right? So that's the wrong choice. So that's a pretty telling feature of which one you need. So I need previous state because I need to say, so this dot set state requires that we return the new state that will be merged with the existing state. So this is going to be an object that represents the new states to be merged. And we're going to say circles because that's what we're going to be updating. And we're going to say circles is an array. And we can take the existing circles, produce state dot circles, and we can add our new additional circle. Okay. Produce state circles, and our new circle, which is going to be an object that contains a number, a background color, and an ID. Okay, we can just pretend for now, we can say 10. I'll call it blue. And ID 2. Okay.
John,
Yep.
can we push pre-state dot circles?
No, no, you cannot, because that is modifying sorry. I said yesterday you can. Thinking about it spending more time thinking about it, no, you can't. You cannot push prev state dot circles dot push new circle. Or like this information, right? And the reason behind that is because of what I said yesterday, you are not allowed to modify the previous state. You're not allowed to modify state. The only thing you can do is you can generate new state from the previous state, but you're not allowed to modify. And this is a modification to it, right? We are pushing something new onto the previous one. So you're not allowed to.
Can we push the new circle to the copied state?
Yeah. So you could do this. Yeah. So you could do this. Sorry. That's fine, because this is a new state, right? That's a new state. And like, it's a very interesting rule that has very unique impact on how we program. And it's always, the biggest part is always dealing with this stuff. Okay. Okay, so we have our new sets, we have our new state, and this will just add one circle. It'll be the same circle every time. We'll come in and we'll fix this stuff up here. Okay. So when we click this button, we're going to call add circle, and it's just going to add a new circle to the state. This will re-render, and we'll get circles that show up. Always the same circle, always the number 10. Let's fix that. Okay. We need a random color function. So let's just throw that in here. Random color. Okay. And we'll generate a random color over here. We'll say this dot random color for the color. So at least we get a little something now. We're getting random colors. And we'll do the same thing for random number. Random number will be math.random. What are we generating between 0 and 100? Oh, just a random number. Okay, so let's just do 0 and 100 because that way it'll fit. So return math.random times 100. And we'll just round that.
Random floor.
What's that?
Math floor. Math floor.
You want to do floor? Sure.
Uh,
So we'll do math floor. I feel like colored brackets, the colorizer, it does weird stuff like this sometimes. See how it's like changing my.
And sometimes it also changes space to a dot.
Yeah, and that's that is because I don't know. That's version 2. That's a bug. Yeah, I noticed that before. Okay, so there we go. So now we have a random number generator. So we'll generate a random number. Great. So we'll say this dot random number. Okay. Pop over here. Hey, nice. Very nice. Okay. Now we have to deal with this ID thing. Okay, and this is something you're going to want to reuse. We can throw this ID up here, just as a variable, just like we did in other things. And then we'll start it at 0. And when we add a new one, we'll say this ID plus. And so it's just a variable that's going to be increasing. So when we add new circles, we're just increasing that ID. If we had to keep track of multiple IDs, we can say circle ID, other thing ID, right? And then just increase them. Okay, so it's not in state. It's not in the state. It's just a variable that we're going to use. Okay, it's just a class variable. And one of the other things I neglected to do was the key is down here in this div, but it should be up here. And I know that because it's yelling at me in the console over here. See, each child should have a unique key prop, and it wants me to have it in circle list. It wants me to have it at the component level, not inside the component. So we're going to say circle elements .id, and that'll add that key and that'll disappear. So now, cool. Whoops. We have something where we can click and get all these random balls with numbers. Now the next piece, the last piece, is when we click on a ball, click, 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 the ball disappears. Okay, we're gonna have to modify state again. And we're
sorry. For ID, does it have to be in set and like declared separately?
It's not state, right? It's declared separately. It's not inside the state. Sorry, I was just had that because I had a default like circle in here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to get rid of this default circle. I'm only using this as a tracking mechanism.
Okay.
And then when I create new circles, new balls, it's going to use whatever number is currently in here, and then it's going to increment. Okay, it's just a counter.
Okay.
That's all. That's all. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we're going to save that. Okay, I took out the extra that ball that I put in earlier as the sample. Okay, so we start with nothing. We need the remove, right? So let's do this in a different method, in a different way. This time, let's add the reverse. Okay. So what does it mean to remove a ball? Well, it means that we're going to have to have a function, remove ball, remove circle. And we're going to need to know about the circle in question. Which circle are we removing, right? And we're going to do pretty much the same thing, except our previous state dot circles and this is pretty common pattern. How do we find and remove something from an array and create a new array at the same time?
Filter.
Yeah, filter. So previous state circles is an array. We're going to go find and remove circle. So we're going to keep, so essentially we're going to keep everything that is not the circle element, like that is not equal to the circle that we passed in. Right? If we said equals equals equals, it will only keep that circle that we passed in. But this is the one we want to remove. So we want to say keep everything except this one. And we're returning that back to this circle's key. Okay, this set state. So this array will now be one less. It will have removed that one circle element. And again, obviously, we can tell that we need this functional set state because we're using the state in here, right? This is the one that you probably will use most of the time, the functional set state. So we have our add circle, we have our remove circle, and now we just need to hook up the remove circle. We don't have a event listener. Now, we're putting the event listener on the circle itself. Unlike in this case, we have it on the button. Now we're putting it on the circle. So I need to pass it down to this circle component. So we'll need to put in an event listener. So we could say remove circle equals remove dot remove circle. Okay, so we're going to pass in this method as a prop. And then down over here in circle, we're going to add it to the circle as a click as an event. So on click, we're going to call props dot remove circle. But we want to pass it the circle in question. But again, I can't do this, right? I cannot put, I can, but this will not result in what I want. I can't put my parentheses on this right here because this will invoke it immediately. So I need to wrap this in a anonymous function. Okay. But the syntax is really nasty. So we're going to do an arrow function. Clean that up. Okay. And there we have it. I have removable circles. This sure beats putting data attributes on elements. I feel like as complicated as this is, and yes, it is complicated, it actually is a lot easier at the same time because I don't have to worry about these crazy click events and tracking things in the DOM. That's what I like about React is I don't need to worry about how do I find this element? Is this the right element? e.target.remove. And I still have to do all this logic anyways. But the thing is, a lot of the logic in React is going to be very similar. As you do this several times, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, this is super similar to what I just, tonight, you're going to be modifying state again. And guess what? It's pretty much going to be the exact same thing, right? Not because I'm setting it up like that. Because there's only so many ways that we manage state, that we set state. There's only so many times you do this before you're like, okay, I'm doing it again. I need to add another object to an array, or I need to add another object to an object, or something like that, right? There's only so many things that you do. And then the logic is pretty consistent, and it makes it really easy to build apps. Okay, the stuff I show you today is not going to be mind-blowing. It's going to be interesting, but not mind-blowing. And so, like, I just like how it just manages everything for us. Okay, it just takes care of everything for us. Any questions about this?
I have a question. Can you explain like the 3 dots more?
So the 3 dots, oops.
Like, why did we need it on add and not remove?
Okay, so the 3 dots does this. So let's say we have an array like this, right? Very simple. And actually, let me bring you over here because it's actually probably an easier place to do it. We have an array like this, right? Okay, so let's call this A. And I want to copy this array. And I want to add an extra item to it, right? So I want to make an array. I want to make an array that looks like this. An array that looks like this. And we'll call it B. So we'll add 2 extra items onto it. Okay, so I want to make an array that looks like this, but I want to use all the stuff that was in the first array. Okay, what the 3 dots does, okay, so we'll start like this. Okay, say array B, the array that I want to build, is A, essentially A plus 6 comma 7, right? That's essentially what it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 6 and 7. But this is not valid syntax, right? That's just, it's just not valid syntax. So what the 3 dots does is it actually explodes this and removes the brackets and then inserts the values right into here. So these 3 dots actually does this, right? So watch. And then it adds 6 and adds 7. And that works for both objects and arrays. So if I had an object that was like this, and I wanted, so now we'll say A to that, and I wanted B to look like that, but had an extra key, or I wanted to change one value in A, I can say this without actually changing A. Remember, okay, so this is without actually changing A. If I did this, A dot B, right? If I changed this key, actually, let's say this. Oh, my variable names are so bad here. Let me just refresh this and get some new variables in here. Let's say obj1. B. 5. Okay, and I wanted object2 to look a lot like that. I wanted it to be identical in every way, except I wanted one of these things to be different. I could say, okay, well, object2 is equal to object1, except I'm going to change B. I'm going to say B equals by. But the thing is, if I say object2 is equal to object1, and then I say object2 dot B equals see ya, object1 was affected too, because this is not creating a new object, right? This is assigning object2 to object1. And because I'm not allowed to modify state inside React, I don't want to do that. What I really want to do is this. So those 3 dots again. Now object 2 is a copy of object 1. It is not object 1. It copied the whole thing. And actually, while I do that, the other thing I can do is I can change keys. I can say, and I want B to be high, by. So it copies it, and then it overrides some of the properties if I want it to. So now object 2 is an exact copy, not the same, not the same object, a copy of the object of object 1 with a different key. You can add more keys if you want, or you can modify keys. So when we're doing objects, the ... again, they kind of like explode. Okay, they explode the objects or explode the arrays. They perform the same kind of thing on arrays and objects, except objects you can also override existing properties. Okay.
So when you did the remove circles, why didn't you use the 3 dots and then just minus B?
Because there's no way to minus, right? You can only change or add. You can't subtract.
Okay.
Yeah, so I could do 3 dots, change, or 3 dots and add, but there's no way I can do 3 dots and subtract.
Okay.
So I use filter instead, because filter also creates a new array. So like this, if we go back to arrays, right, the idea behind the array is we end up creating a new array out of it, right? And we can add things, but we can't remove things. And so instead, going the other way, I have to do a filter to remove stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir. So is it also works on the method inside the object? Like you want to change the method from the previous object?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can change methods. You can change anything. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I have a question about the parentheses.
Which ones?
It's just it's a general question. I see that at some place we use just brackets to replace return, right? But for this one I tried, but it doesn't work. I don't know.
It does. It does. It does. You just have to work it harder. There you go. Wait, so we go, so that, we're missing one here.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
It works.
So for like every arrow function, no matter what it does, I can always change the curly one to a bracket.
Yeah.
No matter if it's returning something or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you really need to return something or not. If you return something and it didn't need anything back, it'll just ignore it.
Okay.
So these purple curly braces are actually the object, right? We're returning an object. That's what's happening. That's why we have those purple curly braces. Okay. A lot of little things to wrap your head around. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So I think those 3 dots are called destructuring. Am I right? Destructured. Array, JavaScript. Destructuring assignment. No, 3 dots, JavaScript. Oh, I forgot the name today. Spread. It's a spread. It's a spread operator. What does the 3 dots do in React? You're going to see it in React. Yeah, obviously in React, you're going to see it often. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you could do that. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. That's neat. Never thought of that. Okay, let's deploy this. So we're going to kill this, and we're going to say Firebase. Let's see if Firebase is working now. It wasn't. It was working perfectly fine last night, and then I reinstalled it this morning to show you. There we go. Okay, so you're going to do Firebase login. Okay, you should already. I am already logged in as jnigel@gmail.com. If you're not, it's going to prompt you for your login information. And you'll stay logged in pretty much forever until you log out. And you don't really need to log out unless other people use this computer. So this is how you can deploy a React app, okay? So we're going to first build it. So we need to build our React app. So because we've been programming it, but we need to build it. So we're going to say npm run build. And that is going to create a new directory, kind of like we were doing before, like dist. Instead of dist, it's going to be called build. And it's going to contain just HTML, CSS, JS, and images and stuff. Okay, so it's building it. Creating an optimized production build. Build, build, build. And it will finish in a minute. Great. So it created all this stuff. Do you need all this stuff? No. This is, again, create React app. It adds extra stuff. This is not a comprehensive deployment method. If you want to get your stuff online, though, this will help. Now, we're ready. We have our stuff, okay? Now we need to put it up on the internet. So we're going to say Firebase init. Okay, just like git init or npm init, Firebase init. And it's going to take a second. And boom, comes up, cool. Which Firebase feature you want to set up for this folder? Press space to select the feature, then enter to confirm your choice. So do we want a database? No. Firestore? I don't know. Never really heard of that, but no. Functions? No. Hosting? Yes. We want to host this thing. So I'm using the arrow keys here. Once I find the one I want, I hit spacebar. And you see it gets selected there. And now I hit spacebar. Now I hit enter. And it says, okay, this is not a project in Firebase. Do you want to use an existing project? No, because it's not an existing project. Do you want to create a new project? Yes. Add Firebase to an existing Google Cloud Platform project? No. Create new project. Enter. Give me a project name. This is important. I screw up on this very often. Just don't use uppercase characters and you'll be fine. Okay. I think, let's find out. So I like to prefix my things with like MIT, because this is going to be unique, right? It has to be unique amongst all the Firebase projects that exist out there. MIT in class, oh, it doesn't like capital letters, I think. In class sample. Enter. What would you like to call your project? And if you call your project the same thing, you just hit enter and it's like, yeah. So I'm just going to call my project the same thing. And now it's creating it. It's going to add.
Same time. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Are you done already?
It says failed.
Probably because you used a capital letter.
No, didn't have a capital letter.
Space, dot? You don't use dot, don't use space.
No, just the dash.
The dash? Interesting. Yeah, okay, so now it's going to say, hooray, Your Firebase project is ready. Okay, so now it's going to ask you a little bit of some questions about your hosting. What directory do we want to use as our public directory? And it defaults to public, but we don't want to use public. We just built a public directory, and it's called build. So we're going to say we want to use build, the build directory. That's where our stuff is in. That's essentially what it's asking you. Where is your index.html? It's in build. It's in the build directory. That's the generated directory. So we're say build. Configure this as a single page app? No. I mean, yes, but no. Hey, index.html already exists. Do you want us to overwrite it? No, I don't want you to overwrite my index.html. All right, and we're done. So we initialized our project. So we built it, we initialized it, it's ready. Now we just say Firebase, deploy. And it goes ahead and it does, boom, done, deploy complete. Now you can go and visit this URL and here it is. Boop, 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 boop. You can do that with all your React projects. It's free. If you need to actually log in and see this stuff, you can go to the website, go to your console, right? And then I think there's a little thing on the side that says hosting. Here's all my projects, right? I've got a lot of projects. And then which one did I just put? In-class sample circles. So you click on that and then you can see all your stuff that doesn't make any sense because it's way too complicated. So it will tell you, I think it'll tell you hosting. If you click on hosting, it'll show you the URL or something like that. Yeah. It allows you to do some custom domain stuff and you can manage it all from here. But I just you can actually manage the whole thing from terminal too. You don't need to go to the web. I find the terminal a little bit cleaner. So that's how you deploy a website with Firebase. Give it a shot. Did you try it again, Yushin? Did it work?
I didn't try again. It doesn't give me any. It just says failed to create a Google Cloud project. See Firebase debug.log for more info. So I don't know.
And yeah, it always says that. And then if you go into that file and you look in it, it usually says something wrong with the name. So
okay, I'll try maybe with a different name.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
Yushin is having a problem, I'm sure I'm gonna run into the exact same problem.
No one can have this. The thing is, if you use a name that already exists, it doesn't tell you the errors. It just says, sorry, there's an error, right? So, which is why I use a very unlikely name that someone else has already used. There's only so many names, right? And it's not about names that you've used, it's names that anyone has used. Right? That's why I always prefix it with MITT. So you might want to call it Yushin's sample circles app.
Yeah, I used a quite complicated name, Yushin SD 260 exercise 3 circles.
Oh, maybe it was longer than 30 characters.
Yeah, I just calculated it's 29. So I probably will give it another name and try it again. Yeah.
So give it a shot if you want. You don't have to. Not required. This is just an FYI. Eventually, you're probably going to want to put some of this stuff online so you can have a portfolio. So, okay, so let's take a break. Let's come back at 25 after, and we'll talk about forms. How do we take in data from forms? That's our topic today. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. See you in a bit. 25 after. App or always has to be this. I want to show you I don't want to show you everything, but I want to show you that these are the pieces that are super fluid about creating things and just arguments and parameters. I don't want to always call it the same thing. Sometimes I call it something different just to show you that you can. But good piece of advice.
Yeah, I just didn't recognize why you did it. I just was
hard to follow
along again the next day, keep keep up with the.
I'll see if I can make that better next time. You guys are actually in a really good position because you can record these.
Yeah.
I'm worried about what's going to happen next year when students can't record them because we're going to be in
Cool. They have
class.
2 years. It's fine.
Yeah, they'll remember, right? They'll take good notes.
Whatever.
Completed exercise.
It'll be fine. You'll have a lot of questions to answer. Great
And
credit.
they get 2 years. Like, that's
And-
take your time because they're going to be our competition.
Hello? Yes, this is. Hi. It's out, it's ready. It's just, I'm here. So, yeah. So I'm going to create a repository array. I'm going to, for this, actually, I have a repository for this, but I'll post this answer that I did today. Knit circles, fall, no, we're winter 2020. So I'll do this super fast here.
Sorry, John, quick question. It says the index file already exists. Do I need to overwrite it? No?
Nope.
Okay.
And then we'll go over here and we'll edit settings and we'll post the solution. And then I'll do the same thing, Ray, for the other ones, just not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I don't need that. Do instead, so we'll do this, this. Yeah, just click on this. It's a link. I'll also post the example that I do today in class. Okay, so today in class, sample, we're going to keep working on our contacts. Okay, so I've done a little bit of work on this in the meantime. All I did was let me actually get this rolling and start. Okay. And the only thing I did was I removed the separation of good guys and bad guys, right? So it's all just one contacts list now. That's the only thing I did in between since yesterday's class. Okay, I took that out. I had added that in, but I just wanted to clean this up a little bit so we can really focus on what we're trying to do today. So once this gets going, at some point in time, it will start, I swear. Wow, this takes forever. This never took this long on my Mac, I swear.
I feel like it's just yours because mine doesn't do that.
Yeah, You know, it's because I'm using this WSL thing, which is really great, but I don't trust it. I don't trust it. I trust it, but I don't trust it in terms of speed. I don't think it's that great in terms of speed. I've been trying to update to the new Windows. I'm going to figure out how to do it over lunch because it just came out today. And I'll update this and we'll see if that makes a difference. Come on. Okay, doesn't matter. While this is going. So today we're going to talk about forms. Okay, yesterday we did state and we did event listeners, right? Now today we're going to talk about forms, how we manage form and form data, because that's something that we've been doing so far too in JavaScript. We need to kind of have that same reflection on how do we do that in React. Okay, so it's actually pretty interesting and pretty straightforward. So the first thing that what we're going to do for this particular app is we're going to add a little search form at the top that will allow us to filter the results of the contact list. Okay, so I actually have this app open over here. I'm just going to steal a little bit of stuff. Okay, from my other one, I'm going to paste it so that way I get the nice stuff over here. We'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this. Okay, and we'll get this nice CSS that goes along with it. At one day we will, when everything starts working in my browser. Okay, so it's just a div. I'm just wrapping this whole thing in a div. Okay, a list contacts div. It's not happy about it. Input and top. Okay, so we wrap this whole thing in a list contacts div, and then we have a top portion, and we have our input. So here is essentially our input. So I'm going to show you how to do this in a couple ways. I'm going to show you first how we manage inputs, and then I'm going to show you how we manage forms separately because they're a little bit different. Okay, so what we end up with is something that looks like this. So you see I don't have my headers, good guys and bad guys. I just have one list of contacts. Okay, that's all I did. I just popped those out, no big deal. Okay, and now I added this input at the top, and you can see it's nicely styled because I have my CSS already done and I gave the things the correct class names, but it's just an input. Okay, that's all it is. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is when I type into this input, what I want to happen is I want this list to reduce in size and only show the contacts that match the stuff I type in. Okay. And I'm going to do a really simple comparison. I'm just going to look for strings that start with the same characters. And I'm only going to look in the name. Okay. Now, this could be way more complicated, but again, the focus isn't to make it amazing. The focus is to show you how we deal with forms, because making it amazing you can do on your own. Learning how to deal with forms is the tricky bit. Okay. So we're going to make it so that way if I type in CAP, Captain America is the only contact that shows up. Okay. Now, the way we deal with forms in React is really, really interesting and really unique. Okay. We do what's called I'm going to type this down here so you get to see it. A controlled component. A controlled component. A controlled component is one where we are actually controlling all the aspects of that component. And you'll see how that manifests itself in an input. Okay, so we have this input, and you can see I type into this input, right? No problem. It's an input. I hit enter, nothing happens because it's an input. Okay. but I want to start listening to this input. Okay. I want to listen to the things that are occurring on when someone types in a character. I want to be able to respond to that character being typed. That's essentially how I'm doing. For this application, the way I want this filter to work is when you type in the letter C and you let go, it automatically tries to filter immediately, right? It's not something that happens on enter. It tries to occur immediately. So every time we type in a letter, it's trying to perform a search or a filter, okay? So that is a different type of action. It's not an on click. What do you think, what type of event do you think that is?
Key press.
Key press. That could be on key press. In this case, I'm going to do an on change event. So when this changes, when something here changes, okay, that's the type of event we're going to do. And we're going to do a search. Okay, so that's what we're going to call this dot search or filter or whatever. Okay. And we're going to say filter. Did I call it filter? Yeah, filter. This is massive. Okay. All right. What's the value of this thing? Input. How do we get the value of this thing? Any ideas? We actually do get an event here, right? As I showed you yesterday. So we actually do have an e.target. So we could say e.target.value. But in React, we don't do it like that. Okay, that's not how we do it. We want to control the component. So we want to control this input. Okay, so it's a very unique way of doing it. React believes that there should be one source of truth for this input. And the way it happens is when someone types in to this input, what we are doing is we are going to update something in state. Every input has its own entry in state. So currently in state right now, we're keeping track of contacts, but we're also going to keep track of every input on the page. Each input has its own entry. So it's going to look like this. Filter, whatever you want to call it, right? You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to match this. And actually we're going to change this, okay? Whatever we want to call it is fine, right? If we want to give it search contacts, right? That's probably a better one. That's fine, because at least it matches the name of this input, okay? So, and it is a string because we're going to be tracking the value in that input, okay? And we're going to default this input to the value that's in state. So it's going to default to empty string, which is exactly what the form would look like, what the input would look like anyways. So we're going to say value equals this dot state dot search contacts. Yeah. This dot state dot search contacts, right? The value of this is empty string, which means the value of this input is going to be empty string. I'm just going to take this on change out for a second. And okay. So you see nothing looks different except check this out. I'm clicking the button and nothing is being entered. Why?
Do we need to prevent default? Is it refreshing when you enter the
You're
key?
not listening to it.
Because the state is never changed.
Yeah.
Because the state is never changing. This .state.search contacts is not changing, and I set the value to empty string, so the value is always going to be empty string. So even if I type in stuff, well, I got to select this first, right? Nothing's updating because this state is forcing the value of empty string. So the concept of a controlled component is that exactly this. We are controlling the value of the component using state, okay? Which means that we now need to accept input from them by doing this. That is what our on change is going to be. Our on change is not actually going to filter down the list. Our on change is going to manage the state of this component. Update, search, contacts. Okay. And so we're going to say update, search, contacts. And all it is we do get E, okay? That's our event, right? We automatically get that. And we're gonna say, this is one of the few times you're gonna use this different set state. We don't care what was in the state before, okay? We're updating the state to whatever was changed in here. This dot set state. So the event.target is this input. The value is whatever they typed in. And we're updating the string. Okay, we're replacing it. That's what this is doing. We're totally replacing it. We're not adding on anything. We're totally replacing it. Once set state is done, it re-renders this entire thing. And this value, this .state.search context gets updated. And so the value gets reflected in the input. So now when we come back here, update search contacts, this update search contacts. Come back here. I hit a key now, and I got it. Now, I'm going to show you something else. There is a plugin, a React Developer Tools plugin that you can get for Chrome or any major browser. If you click on that, or actually if you install it, okay, it'll show up elements, console, sources, network, performance, memory, probably show up under these little arrows over here. Way at the end, it's got a little React symbol. Components. It shows you your components. And it shows you all the properties. And if you click on a component, like app, it'll actually show you the props and state of that component. It's pretty awesome. So you can actually see the state of my app component, this app component. You can actually see the current state of it, which is awesome. So you can actually see that the stuff that I entered in this input is actually in the state. That's spectacular. Because now we can use that to filter our component, to filter our list. Watch this. If this dot state dot search contacts, ooh, length is greater than 0. So if this string dot length is greater than 0, that means someone's typed something into that bar, right? Otherwise, no one typed in anything to that bar. If someone typed in something to that bar, let's say let's actually start with this. Const contacts equals this dot state dot contacts. So I can remember the only important thing here is that I'm returning JSX. I can write all sorts of logic before that. So my logic that I'm going to do here is going to be to check to see if anyone's typed in anything. If they have, I'm going to reduce the size of that contacts list by that much. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to modify the state. I'm not going to say this dot state equals. I'm just going to reduce the size of the list by setting it into contacts and then saying if they did something, then contacts equals contacts dot filter. Wait, no, find. How do I find all? Yeah, filter, which will give me everyone that matches a certain criteria, right? Throw away all the ones that don't match the criteria. And we'll say contact, we want to find contact dot name dot starts with the, sorry, 1 second, sorry, apologies. That input box, we're going to filter our contacts out. Just for display purposes, we're not changing the state. The state is the contacts that exist. If we change the state, we will lose those contacts. We don't want to change the state. All we want to do is we want to keep the state, but we just want to reduce what's being displayed. And so we're going to copy the contacts into a variable, and then we're going to modify that variable inside the render. Okay, we're going to reduce the size of that. It will not cause a re-render. Okay, and we're going to find all the contacts that start with this dot search state dot right. This dot state search contacts, whatever the string is in here. Okay, and then over here where we use this dot state dot contacts, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to say contacts because of this. And if you really wanted to, you could actually, it's probably better to do this. Actually, this is an array. We're going to say this. This is a new context. So we're not actually ever modifying this. Okay. Let's take a look at that. So nothing looks different. Nothing looks different because I did this, right? So I'm cloning this contact, state.contacts, all these contacts. I'm putting them into a variable. I'm checking to see if this has any string in it, any characters in it, if the length is greater than 0. It does not. So we render as normal. Otherwise, as soon as I type in a letter, G. Whoa. Assignment to a constant variable. Where did that happen? Oh, yeah. It's a const. I can't do that. Yeah. Okay, let's try that again. G. No contacts match with the letter G. Capital C. If I delete this, it's another change, right? If I remove this, it's a non-change. It modifies this, right? It fires this, update search contacts, sets the state to the value. The value will be empty string. Updates the state. When state updates, this component re-renders. When state updates, components re-render. And so as long as I'm controlling this component, whenever I modify the value of this input, it is going to it will re-render. On re-render, I can do any sort of logic I want. On first render, I'm just setting it to contacts. So, questions? So now we have the ability to filter. So this is not a deletion, right? If I deleted these from state, that would be it. Those other three would be gone, like toast, not coming back. But instead of not deleting them, they're not setting the state. I'm just, before I decide to display, I'm picking out what I want to display. That is what these lines are doing. Before I decide what to display, before I decide to display everything, I'm deciding what needs to get displayed. And I'm deciding that based on the state that's in, the state of the input that's in my state. So if there is anything in the input, reduce the size of the contacts that I want to display based on the information that I have. That's all I'm doing. The beautiful thing about this is it's honestly not that difficult. This could, you can also put this in a function, right? And then just call that function. But like, we didn't have to add a lot. We added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of code, and we get this out of it. Like that's pretty amazing. Questions, or is there something you want me to go over again, something that's confusing you, something that you're not quite sure about, or just you don't get it and you want me to do it again?
From line 48 to 50, that if statement, I guess I'm getting confused with the function's scope that is working in where and where. Why does it have to be within the render?
It doesn't oh, well, because because when state updates, render gets called every time. And that's why it has to occur in the render, right? These other functions, we are manually calling. This state only gets set when the app loads. These other functions occur based on like event listeners, but render reruns after every time state updates. So whenever we perform this, whenever we do line 41, line 44 is going to run again, and everything inside. And so the reason why we put this in there is because we update this, it filters out and then displays. We update it again, it performs the filter, and then it displays.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So most of the logic that you need or that you want for determining what to display can happen inside this render, okay? So if you need to shift things around or break things into different categories, or you start with a big list and you want to reduce that list, a lot of that is going to happen here. And you saw that the other day when we did break it down into different categories. We had contacts.filter, blah. And then down here, we had another contacts.filter. We said contacts.filter good guys, contacts.filter bad guys. And this is essentially doing the same thing, except we need a little bit more logic around that. So we're going to, because we need a little bit more logic than just contacts.filter, we need an if statement to decide even whether or not we should be filtering, right? And so I don't want to put some sort of weird ternary in here that'll look super bad. I would rather just separate that logic out, decide what contacts I'm going to show, and then do it over here. Okay.
What helps you decide, like, what strategy do you use to decide what components to make, like how many JS files to have?
Well, usually when you're looking at a page, you can actually see them ish. Like, let's just go pick a page and we'll pick Amazon. Let's look at some things that we might have here. So here, there'd be a lot of components. Let's say we have a header component. In our header component, we probably have a search component. We probably also have a cart component. These ones are probably, they probably don't need to be components because they look pretty, this is probably a component too because it looks complicated. Anything that has like a reasonable level of complexity, you're probably going to want to put into its own component. This is probably a 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 component. And then inside those, they might have more. Did I make the right choices? I don't know. Maybe. There's no like absolute, this is how it is, right? These are for sure components. This thing, they could probably be the same component, just being reused over and over. Like, and so when you're deciding, generally what will happen is your designer will give you a mock-up of like, here's what the website's going to look like, or here's what the app is going to look like. And then you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, okay, this looks like it could be a component. So these things here, these big rectangles, I have a baby, so I look a lot at baby toys. Don't judge me. Okay. Oh, I should get these. Those are cool. So this is probably a component because it's a big block. It's repeating. It looks like it has pictures in it. Seems like it would be a component, right? Like that's kind of how you do it. There's a, sorry, go ahead.
So a page like this would have like 400 JS files. Okay.
Yeah. A page like this, an app like this would have like 400 JS files. Yeah. Yeah. And like a lot of them are going to be like 15 lines long. Right. And it's okay to have a lot of files. It's just another way to organize it. It's like libraries have a very, they have a ton of books and they have a very specific way of organizing books. They have books, they have the Dewey Decimal System, right? So you know which area of the library to go in, but then within each area you have, it's sorted by a very specific method. Right. And so that's essentially what we're doing. We're creating organization here. And like files is not a big deal. Having files is not a big deal. Files is just another thing in that hierarchy that allows us to organize things because then we can put a name to it. Right. We can say cart.js and then you know, oh, that's the cart component. And anything that's in this cart little thing up here is probably going to be somehow related to the cart component or search.js. Oh, that's the search component. I need to work on that today because there's a bug in the search. Okay, so I'm going to crack open the search component, search.js. And yeah, there's 400 components, but they can also be organized into folders. So you might have the header folder that has all the components of the header. Right, so you start creating this hierarchy. So you have folders, and then you have files, and then within your files you have classes, And it's all about creating structure, because the application, one of the biggest things I hear from students is they go out in their internship and they're like, oh my God, I've never worked on an app so big before. And I'm like, yeah, that's every app. The apps that we work in this course are tiny, super tiny, 150 lines of code. Right now, we're actually starting to work with multiple files, but the stuff you're going to work with, hundreds, thousands of files, thousands, millions of lines of code. How do you know where it is that you need to modify? And it's all about that structure.
And so when you're working in a team, do you have set standards typically for like what things are named, so that when someone works on one piece of it, they know what they're calling from your piece of it?
Yes-ish. Like you try to maintain, the standards may not be written per se. Sometimes they are, but there's always going to be room for interpretation, always room for like no one's going to tell you, you must call it this. Sometimes they will, because they will be the ones who write their code first. And they said, oh, I called your method this. And now you have to call it that, right? Because sometimes they connect like that, or other times people will look at your code and say, oh, that's a shitty name. I'm going to just change that. You can change other people's code too after they commit it, right? It's not like you wrote the code, you own the code forever. You're contributing to something that is a group project, so anyone can then go in and say, no, that's not a good name. I'm going to rename that. That doesn't conform to our standards. I'm going to rename that. Hey, Jen, you named this thing. It doesn't conform to our standards. I just want to let you know, we do it like this, not like that. Cool, right? No problem. Right? And so that communication, all that stuff, that happens all the time, every day.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And a lot of that stuff we don't get to see in the course like this, because, we're still really, really early in our development careers. And those are the types of things that you will really get exposed to once you jump in a big team. And it's the dynamics of how that works is really interesting. Great question. Any other questions before I take this to the next level?
A small question here. How does event.target works?
Oh, it's the same. It's the same. Event E. It's just like it's a special React event, but they try to make it look and feel just like the event.target that we're used to. E is actually not a real DOM event. It's called a synthetic event. So if we console log E, it will show up as a synthetic event. I just love that word, synthetic. So when I start typing in here, so it's a synthetic event. It's not your typical DOM event that you would get if you were just writing plain vanilla JavaScript. It's a wrapper over, but it has all the same features that an event has in JavaScript. It is a JavaScript event, but it's a special event created by React called a synthetic event. Yeah. So, but as far as we're concerned, it has all the same features that an event has. It has a target, it has a value, it has e.target, current target, bubbles, all the same stuff that you care about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we need to take this to the next level. Okay, we're going to change this, and we're going to wrap this bad boy in a form. Okay, and we are only going to perform this filter when this form has been entered, when someone hits enter on the form. Now, this is going to be a little bit contrived, I'll be honest, okay? Because I'm gonna have to turn this I'm gonna have to flip this around a little bit, because I don't want it, if I'm saying only search and someone enter, don't search every time someone hits click, I can't just check the length. There has to be something that tells me someone has hit enter. Okay, and so I essentially need to track another piece of state. Okay, and this piece of state is going to be, so this is a search contacts value, but this is the actual filter value. Okay, so, and these actually are going to be often the same. Okay, but this filter value is only going to be populated when someone hits enter. When someone hits enter, the value from search contacts, remember, search contacts is only tracking what people type in here. And so if I looked at the value here, it would look exactly like this, right? That's what it would look like. Filter value wouldn't have anything in it until someone hit enter. Once someone hit enter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this value over. And so I'm only, instead of checking search contacts length, I'm going to check the filter length. So if I do that, if I check the filter value, let's just call it filter. Okay, so now when I type stuff in, nothing happens, right? Because this is still empty because I haven't hit enter yet. That's what I'm going to build. Okay, that's what I'm going to build. That's what I'm going to build. So I'm going to make it only, so when you have a form all the time, not a form, an input. Remember, like I said this earlier, if you have an input, you should have one matching field inside of state that is tracking and controlling the value of that input. This filter, line 8, this is totally different, and this has nothing to do with the controlled form. This is what I need in order to achieve my goal. This is purely for form control or input control. This is goal oriented. I need to have this in order to achieve what I'm trying to do. In other circumstances, perhaps this will be an array of stuff that you need to add to, or I don't know, right? It's going to differ all the time. Now, what happens when, so now I type it in, capital C, nothing happens because filter is still empty. Filter is still length of 0. So what I want to do is when someone hits enter, I want to run an action that will copy whatever value is in search contacts into filter. And then as soon as filter updates, it will re-render and line 49 to 51 will start running because filter won't be empty anymore. It will have this value in it. Whatever value is in here will be copied into here. So let's write a little function to do that. Let's do the filter contacts function. Okay, and all it's going to do is it's going to take, it needs to use the previous state. So we're going to have to say previous state function. And we're going to update the value of filter. So filter will be pre state dot search contacts. So the value of filter will now be pre state dot search contacts. Now, the other thing I want you to note about these updates to state, I am not, see, these get merged. So which means, notice I'm not mentioning anything about the filter property. I'm not mentioning anything about the contact property. I'm only merging search contacts. I'm only merging filter. The other pieces that I didn't touch, they don't change. So I'm only merging what matters to me. Okay. So this will merge this filter. When do I want that to happen? I want this to run when I enter this form, when I submit. So on submit, this dot merge filter contacts. One of the things though that you'll want to pay attention to is we're going to have to prevent default. It's a form. Okay. So that this is the little tweak. So now when I type in C, nothing happens. But now I'm going to hit enter. I hit delete, nothing happens. Oh. Oh.
Because back in your in the if else statement, the starts with search content, line 58.
Yeah. Thank you. And it should start with filter. Starts with whatever's in the filter. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So let's try that again. See, enter, delete, enter. Now it works on enter. Okay, because I'm only changing the value. Essentially, I'm only changing the value of filter when someone hits enter. Okay, so this is how you can manage forms. So because the inputs are controlled, when someone submits a form, I never have to go and get each input separately as like e.target dot like the input itself, because the values for all of the inputs are in state, right? So whenever someone, let's say you want to do something different when someone hits submit. Let's say you wanted to add a new contact, right? And I had 2 form fields. Okay, let's just say I just have a name. All I have is a name. I don't know how well 3 form fields will work here. Okay, so we would have name, image, email, right? So I would have to have 3 pieces of information for that. Name, field, email, field, and image field. Again, you call them whatever you want, doesn't matter. 3 of these, because we have 3 inputs, right? I'll change, we don't have names for them, that's fine, they don't need names. The value is going to be, one is going to be name field, placeholder, name. This is going to look probably really bad. On change, we'll deal with that shortly. Name, email field, placeholder, email. And placeholder contacts, image. This will be image field. Good. Let's see how bad that looks. Cannot read the length of undefined. Yeah, so we're going to get rid of this because now we're not filtering anymore. I'm changing it. Totally changing it. Okay. Contacts is not defined. Yeah, this.state.contacts. Reverting back because we're not filtering out anything anymore. All right, so name, email, image. Once I hit enter, right, and on submit, this is all inside this form. Create contact. That's what we're gonna do. So each one of these has to have their own thing in state, and they do, and which means they're each going to have their own function. Okay, now it's not going to be update search contacts, it's going to be update name field, update email field. Is there a better way to do this? You're damn right there is, but we'll deal with that tomorrow. Update email field, update image field. And this is just going to be this.setState. Name field is going to be the value of that name input. Email field is going to be email field and the value of that input. Image field is going to be image field and the value of that input. Okay, so now these are all going to be controlled. Update name field, update email field, and update image field. So they're all going to be controlled. Type in stuff. Okay, if I look at the state of this app, you can see email field has stuff in it. You can see it growing. Name field. This is email field. You can see it growing. And this is the other one, right? So we have all of these in state, they're all controlled, which means when we submit to create a contact, we have all that information already available to us inside of state. We do not have to go and get values from these inputs anymore. We have it all inside of our state. So to create a contact, it would look like this. This.set state. We need the previous state because we have all that data in state. We have all this stuff in state that we need to grab. Name field, email field, image field. Right, so we have to go get all that information. So we're going to say previous state function, and we're going to update the state like this. We're adding a new contact, right? So we need to create a new contact. So to create a new contact, we have to say contacts is all of the contacts from before, previous state dot contacts, okay, plus a new contact, which we're going to build, which will look like name of the new contact is going to be previous state dot name field, the thing that we collected, because it's all controlled. The email is going to be previous state dot email field. Good. And image is it called image URL? Avatar URL, of course it is. Avatar URL is going to be image field. Name email, good. Okay. And this will create a new contact without actually accessing any of these inputs directly because they're controlled. Everything is in state. So name, John. Email, john@email.com. And let's go just grab a picture of something. Picture. Curious to know what I'm gonna get back. Okay, sure, let's use this one. Okay, and we're gonna copy image address, giant image. And we're gonna pop over here, we're gonna paste that in, and we're gonna hit enter, and nothing happened. Now I'm sad. Do I have my on submit on this form? On submit this dot create contact, create contact. I don't know why this isn't working. Maybe I need a button. Let's just add a button. And when I click this button, it'll submit. That's fine. Okay, so when we click this button, it'll submit the form. There, hi, right? I do need to do the e.prevent default. I saw it. Okay. So now I can create someone with a new name, new email address, and a broken image. Click hi, and there you go. Now, to clear this stuff out, how do you think you'd have to clear that out? Any ideas? You would have to update your state. Reset it. Right, reset it in your state. So we used it from previous state. Now we're resetting it to empty. Done, gone. So now when we type something in, we add a new person. Cleared out, ready to go. Ready to go again. Okay. And so I've shown you a couple different ways to manage state here. I'm going to delete this one because this was not where I intended to go today. But I'm going to show you, okay, I'll keep this one. It's terrible. It's super ugly. So you'll have to forgive the, the CSS. If you're okay with that, the code's good. The code's fine. It's not great, but okay. It works, right? And it has everything that I want to show you. But I want to show you one more piece before we go, okay, and before we're done. And that is what happens when we move this to a component. Because really, this whole contacts list top thing, this whole form, that should be its own component, okay? This should be its own component. So we're going to make a quick component for that. So we're going to say contacts top.js. And in there, we're going to do a lot of the same stuff. Okay, React, we don't need that. We're going to say class. That's top, extend react.component. Okay, and we're going to need a render. Okay, and over here inside of our render, we're going to render our stuff, which is this stuff over here, this big contacts top div. Okay. And over here, we're going to import contacts top. Now, much easier, because now we can just say, oh, so much nicer, right? And then we separated that entirely. Now, the problem is this has a bunch of functions and state that needs to track. So this component can have its own state as well. Okay, so all this state that we're tracking over here doesn't necessarily need to be here. Okay, we can move, if the form is over here in this component, let's move that state over here. Okay, and get it out of here. Because this component This component shouldn't care or manage the state of this component. This component should care and manage the state of itself. That's the whole idea behind these components. They're supposed to be as self-contained as possible, right? We're reducing that cohesion, right? So this component manages its own state. We need to export this, by the way. Okay. Now, we have all these functions that don't exist here. These are going to have to come in as props. Now this actually, sorry, these three, update name field, update email field, update image field, no problem. We can move those over, right? Because that goes along with all this managed state management stuff, right? These update name field, update email field, update image field, that's all about managing that component's state and these inputs state, right? The only one that matters is this create contact one. Okay, we have no way of creating a contact in here. This is a very unique thing. So what we're going to do is instead of, we're going to have to pass through a function down to here that will allow this component to pass data back up, right? The data flow goes down, but we're still able to kind of slide some data upwards towards our parents. And it happens like this. So I need on form submit, I want to create a new contact. So I'm going to write a function, this, so create contact. Now the problem is that this component doesn't have any contact state, nor should it. Because if I move the contacts down here too, that means I have to render the contacts in here, and then I end up in the same position as I was before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass down this function, create contact. Okay, I'm going to say create contact. We're going to pass that through props. So now we have a function in here. That we can call. This.props that create contacts is referring to this over here. And we don't have to worry about these guys anymore because that one doesn't manage it. So we need to be able to provide it with name, email, and avatar. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. What was it? Name, email, avatar. So we're going to pass that stuff up to that function over here. It's going to receive it, and then it's going to use it to update and create a new contact. Oops. It also doesn't need to prevent default anymore because it is not a form. The default, the prevent default has to happen down here because this is what's managing that form submit. So you see how we've completely pulled them apart entirely. This now manages, it has its own state. It manages its own state. And then it just calls whatever function that was provided to it and provides that data and prevents default. So we've separated it entirely. We don't have a return statement. Okay, so this now is completely separate. So, and it still works. Except we don't have that reset of these things, which we need to do. After we create the contact, now we can reset them inside this component. So we're doing a lot of the same stuff that we've already learned how to do, but we're applying it in a different manner. Actually, I don't need the previous state to reset these things. I can just say email field is empty. Name field is empty. And image field is empty because they're not based on what was in there before. I'm literally just emptying them out. Doing this forces this to re-render as well, and all these things, all these values will change. So now these empty out, and we can still delete. I see you shaking your head, Millie. So today's the second hardest day.
You said today will be easier, but I don't really think so.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Like, you need to understand that we're doing a lot of the things that we've already done. We're just doing them differently. We've already added event listeners. We've already added, we know how to make methods, right? We know how to add event listeners. We know how to pass props, right? And that's the thing, like a lot of this stuff is stuff that we kind of already know how to do. It's just a matter of organizing it and understanding how something like this would work. Okay. What I would recommend for tonight, okay, what are you going to do tonight? Let me show you what you're going to do tonight, and then let's talk about it. And then I'll answer questions, and then we'll go for lunch. Okay. So tonight, you are going to do a little bit of reading. There's not a lot of reading, surprisingly. You're probably going to want to watch this video again. Okay. Show topic. I promise, I absolutely 100% promise tomorrow will be way easier. Way easier. Okay, like night and day easier. I promise. And then we're going to go into the weekend, and you're going to practice and practice and practice. Okay. So today we're going to build a to-do list, and it's pretty much it's the return of our MITT's amazing assignment. This one, right? Except all this does is two things. That's it. Just add a repair, remove a repair. That's it. That's all I'm asking that you build. Which means you will need to do some sort of input stuff. So here's what I'm going to throw out at you. While I have some very specific specifications of how I want this thing built, what I'm going to ask you to do, I say use at least 3 components, do it like this, do it like that. I'm going to say this, just get it done. Do it however is the easiest for you to do first. If that's building it all in one component with one state and managing everything all at once, no form at all, do that. If you finish that, make it 2 components and refactor everything. Okay? Tomorrow when I do this, that's how I'll do it. I'll do it with one giant component and then I'll refactor it. We'll break, just like I did today. I'll start with one big component. I'll refactor it, break it into 2 components. You only have one input to track. You only have one input to track. So one controlled component. You only have one empty list of repairs that you need to add and remove from. And that's it. No filtering, no nothing. Okay. I've included the sample HTML and CSS files if you want, but if you don't want to worry about that styling stuff, just use blank things. The styling is not important. Get something working. Okay. Get the same concept working. Fill in a form field, hit enter, click on the element, it disappears, right? The basics are there. I just like to do this so that way it feels like you're doing something nice. That's all. Okay. The video that I did today, the contacts list, is way more complicated than this. Okay. Not intentionally. It just, that's how it is. Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking, John, even if you give that good and bad guy in the assignment, that would be very challenging as well. There are so many small things. I mean, a lot of things that's going on in that one. There
are, and that's why I removed that. There are so many little tiny things in React, and that's the challenging part, right? Is that it's like doing React. It's like, yeah, it's just JavaScript, but you really got to have a super good handle on how JavaScript works in order to really understand this, because there's not a ton of new concepts, but there's enough of them that if you don't have a good handle already on JavaScript, it's just like way over your head. And trust me, we'll get there. I promise that we will get there. I'm probably going to extend this class by a couple days because I'm feeling the speed. I'm kind of like, I put down notes of things that I want to cover, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to cover this, 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 and this. And then as I'm doing it, I'm like, oh shit, okay, well, yeah, but we should also look at it like this because this is really how I want it. And then as I explain it, I'm like, oh man, this is really fast. So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, I promise, I know the content already for tomorrow. I already know the exercise, so I'm prepared for tomorrow. I know the content and the exercise is lighter. We're going to be building on top of this repairs app. Okay. So the only thing that we're doing tomorrow is we're learning how to connect to an API to pull in data. That's it. And that's actually really easy. So we're just going to, instead of starting with state, we're going to learn how to pull in data and inject that into state instead of creating our own state to start with. And that's all we're doing. So that's pretty easy. So then we will have the opportunity to rebuild this stuff in another way, okay? And take another opportunity to try to understand these things. And then on Monday, our first assignment is due. It's pretty good. It's going to be very much in line with our exercises, with a couple of little things thrown in there. We're going to have all day Monday to work on it. I'm not teaching anything new on Monday. It's just assignment day. And then you're going to have class on Tuesday. Assignment will be due Wednesday morning. Yeah. So it's you'll have 2 days, 1 day entirely devoted to the assignment. And then the next day will be some information presented. Wednesday, I will re-present that information. And then Thursday Thursday's supposed to be final project, but I think I'm going to push that back to Friday, weekend, Monday submission. So that's what I'm thinking.
There's only one assignment and one final in this?
It's only a 2-week course.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I read it, Jen, 40% for the first assignment and 60% for final. So we're like, wow.
Yeah. It's hard to decide how to balance those, right? If I make the final really heavy, then if you screw up on the final, you're doomed. If I make the assignment really heavy, if you screw up the assignment, you're doomed. I don't want anyone to be doomed.
In the universities right now, they're grading like pass fail.
Who?
So, like in the universities,
Yeah.
they're grading pass fail right now.
That's pretty much how I do it. It's just your pass is just you get anything above 50 is a pass. Anything below 50 is a fail. So it's pass fail, right? And you don't, if you don't think I think about that when I look at things, I think about that. I don't just calculate the grade and then be like, oh, 49%. Oh, well, see you later, student. I am very thoughtful and careful with what I'm doing. And I look at things as a whole, right? I look at things as like, do I want to give this person a chance? Are they in class every day? Are they showing me that they want to be part of this? Are they working hard? Are they like doing this and doing that? Yes. Are they sitting at 48? Okay, they're not sitting at 48, they're sitting at 51, right? Like there's a lot of things that play a role. I'm not really that concerned.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not really that concerned. I'm not
it takes like a bit to get in the zone. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
The last one, the first 2 assignments, I was meh, and then I felt confident in the final. But for this one, we don't have that build up. So.
Okay, why don't we do this? Let's do this. Let's do this. I'm going to quickly do a quick change here. We're going to save the full to-do list for tomorrow with the 3 components for the weekend. We're going to do the full-blown one for the weekend. We're going to do the simple one tomorrow. One component, just one component. Don't worry about multiple components, multiple states, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we're going to move that over to here. Exercise 5. But along with that, we're also going to include the exercise 5, the API stuff. So we're gonna do that. And for today, we're just going to do, because I don't want to have to put together a brand new exercise that looks and feels totally different. For today, we're just going to build it with one component. Just do this in one component. Because actually the difference is pretty staggering. Remember, our goal is to manage these form fields using controlled components. Okay, so you will need to have multiple keys in or properties in your state. Okay, just do it with one component. One component is actually pretty easy, and I'm pretty confident that most of you will be, I won't say easy, much more doable. And I'm pretty confident that most of you will be able to do that. Tomorrow we'll add a little bit and we'll make it a little bit more complicated instead of making it super complicated today and only a little bit more complicated tomorrow. Sound good? Okay, so just do it in one component. Tomorrow for the review, for the reveal of how to do it, I'll just do it in one component. Then we'll go from there. Okay, so you're tracking one element. By the way, I'll push this stuff that I did today. Git branch controlled components. Okay, and git checkout components. I'll post the link in comments. Components, git push origin. components. And I'll post this branch. So this is going to be a branch. So I'll pass you the branch. There we go. Inside Discord somewhere. Okay, there you go. So here's the sample that I did in class today. Okay, so give it a shot. Let me know what you're feeling. Let me, again, like no one's really, the only questions I got yesterday were about reviewing previous work and not about any React stuff. Nothing, zero. A little bit concerning, but we'll play by ear. Okay, if we need a couple extra days to sort this stuff out, we'll do a couple extra days. Okay, like again, if I feel like 50% of you are going to just bomb the final, then I haven't done my job. I'm going too fast. I'm not taking the time to make sure you understand. I'm not explaining things clearly enough, right? If we suddenly go from an 82% class average, which is pretty consistent from course to course to course, to a 40%, that's my problem. And I'll rectify that. If someone who doesn't come to the class and doesn't really care and doesn't do any exercises, I can tell, is the only person that's left out and everyone else is getting 80% or 75%, well, so be it, right? So when I say I'll deal with it on my side, don't take that as like, hey, it's a free pass. It's not, right? You still have to work your ass off to do this stuff. But I got to make sure that everyone's there or the majority of people are there. And so that's what I'm focused on. Okay. Any other questions before we go?
I actually have one small thing.
Yeah.
Could you go back to the VS Code in a little up? Sorry, a little down. Oh, yeah. So we have on the create contact function, the prevent default, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that work as clearing whatever was written?
Nope. Prevent default prevents the form from being submitted. That's it. Remember when we're doing this in JavaScript, we used to have to say e.target.value equals empty string to clear that field. That's how we used to have to do it. But because the fields are being managed in state, we're saying that's the state element that's tracking that field. That is now empty. That's what we're saying.
That's what I got wrong in my head. And I was wondering, like, sometimes I need to do the empty string at the above, like to clear, and then sometimes I don't. And thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Okay. All right. Let's take lunch. Let's go. Let's get out of here. It's like 11:50. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm sure you are too. Thank you very much for being patient with me today and for taking the extra time. Again, if you have any questions, please message me, message Zach. Okay. And we will continue this tomorrow. I promise tomorrow is going to be a nice Friday. Not nice outside, but nice in this class. Okay. So we'll take care of things tomorrow. Good luck. Please try. Do your best. Make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Okay. And we'll figure it out together tomorrow. All right. See you later.
Thank you, John. Bye.
See ya. Thanks.